Training camp is open, and I'll tell you who the Jacksonville Jaguars sleepers appear to be. And then I'll tell you why it's very, very important that those bodies exist. We'll talk about it today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. And we appreciate the everydayers who join us because it is your team every day. And we always thank you for your time and making us your first listen. Wherever you find your podcast, you can find us. Whether you watch or listen, make sure you tap into those locations to make sure you do not miss an episode like the one today that is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Day 2 of training camp. I thought what we would do today, because I saw messages from people saying that a lot of the questions that they were getting were redundant about Trevor Lawrence, about Travis Hunter. Of course, you're going to get those questions early in camp, right? You're going to get them. But I decided to do a little bit something different. What do the bodies mean is where we're going to end up. And what I mean by that is what I have noticed in 2 days is it's more than just the regular people that you were looking forward to that are going to matter for this team. So we're going to go through that. By the end of the show, you'll understand exactly where I'm at with it. Why depth matters most to the Jags in 2025. A little bit of a complex way to explain what I'm going to explain, but we're going to make sure we get to it. But first, we have to identify them. And we identify them in the first segment by talking about camp sleepers to watch. For the record, no one down there called the people I'm about to talk about sleepers. I did that. Me, Tony Wiggins. And I did it because there are folks that people don't really talk about very much. They're not the high draft picks. They're not the big-time free agents that were brought in this year. Some of them are guys that were brought in a year ago. Some were people that were drafted in the last 3 or 4 years that haven't really lived up to expectations, right? And folks kind of forget about them. But they forget about them not remembering that they're here for a reason. The Jaguars staff didn't just fall from Mars or Venus. They've been in the NFL, which means they are guys and people that have scouted against a lot of these players in the past. And prior to that, there are a lot of people, or after that, there are a lot of people that have game planned and prepared. So just like the Jaguars have a pro personnel department, and what those guys do is watch players from other teams. That's the main part of the job. That's what pro personnel is, right? There's 2 sides to the scouting thing. One is the college scouting side. That is the bigger department. The smaller side is where you find a lot of former players. And those are the pro personnel people. This is why I tell folks that whenever a job comes open and you see folks opining for people that have been in the pro personnel side only, I always tell them those people aren't really qualified without getting into player personnel first. You can get into player personnel after you've been in pro personnel, and that will teach you about the college side if you haven't done it. It's almost like replacing education with experience, right? But you ain't just going to come from the pro personnel side of this thing and just become a GM because you have no idea how the college side works. So I went through that and explained that just to explain this, that everyone here, even the new people in the personnel department, knows about the players that are here, that have been here, that have underachieved. They know what they had them ranked as. They know what they felt about them, especially a guy like James Gladstone who was looking around. They know what they felt about those people in the draft process, as well as how they felt about their career. And this is the thing else. This is the other thing that they know. They know too good not to draw a conclusion or pass too much judgment on these players that have underachieved under the old regime, the one that they were hired to replace. Those guys got fired for a reason. And you can hear it when you hear Dewey Wingard talking to other players talk about how aligned they are with everybody. So I'm going to tell you right now, there are some players, and I'm going to focus early on the secondary and the defensive line, because I'll start on the defensive front. When Mason Smith went out, I was talking to Jordan DeLugo. What's up, Jordan? We were talking yesterday. It was like, maybe they need to get into the 3 technique market. And this is after I spent all offseason saying they need a 3 technique. And I don't believe Mason Smith's injury is that bad. But with Eric Armstead starting, Mason Smith being the future, we forget about Tyler Lacey. And the thing about Tyler Lacey is they love his offseason work. He is here for a reason. The reason he is here is because they feel some type of way about him, and that a 6'4", 285-pound dude has a lot of value. And now the value is if they had to line up tomorrow, he would probably be Eric Armstead's backup at 3 technique. Buster Brown comes to mind in the secondary. He has actually played extremely well, and there are some people who believe that he will be the one that lines up in the starting role when Travis Hunter is on offense and not lining up starting on defense. Why did it take it to his 3rd or 4th year for this to happen? It took this long because they're finally running a defense that is conducive and that matches up and it aligns, if you will, if I can keep using that word, with his skill set. Chris Braswell is someone we have heard about every single year. And folks are telling me, man, Chris Braswell, I had a former coach tells me Braswell had a good camp last year. Braswell looks like a dude that could come up and really, really make some noise, right? Not only Chris Braswell in that secondary, of course, you know, we got Jarian Jones, but Daniel Thomas is still here running around playing safety, looks the part, is a great special teams player. Dewey Wingard, a lot of people's favorite, and then I found out some people don't like Dewey, but that's okay. It's also a guy. Here's another name, Antonio Johnson. Antonio Johnson looks a little bit different. I thought he was too skinny before. He's like 189, 190 at almost 6'3". He's filled that out a little bit. At 6'2", he's almost 200 pounds, and you can see the difference in the way that he's yoked up. DeAndre Prince is another one. Zachary McPherson, a 4th-year player out of Texas Tech. Jabbar Muhammad, do not sleep on Jabbar Muhammad. Jabbar Muhammad was a big-time high school player, was a big-time college player. You know, Jabbar Muhammad's problem is with people, or that people's problem is with him. He's 5'10", he's got short arms, but he's a dog. Why am I mentioning all of these guys when we have Tyson Campbell and Jordan Lewis and Travis Hunter and all of these other people, Darnell Savage? It's because depth is super, super important, and it really is super, super important to this team. I'm going to tell you why, from a football standpoint, as well as from the standpoint of compensation. We're going to do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat. Get your draft board ready and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and my friends at Locked On Jaguars are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too if you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league, right? I mean, this is the only one I play. Yahoo is where I've been for the last 15 years, and I don't know why you do anything different because they're the absolute truth. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August 4th. Stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. All right, we're moving along here on day 2 of training camp from Locked On Jaguars. Not much went on today, just typical training camp stuff still, and just helmets and shorts. But I was inclined to mention this because Caleb Ransaw made a big play on the ball. Of course, Ransaw's a rookie. who was drafted just this past season from Tulane, this offseason from Tulane. And then Zachariah McPherson made a really, really nice play too, the fourth-year player out of Texas Tech. Danico Slaughter is also someone that's trying to gain a little headway. I mentioned Jabbar Muhammad, and of course, there's DeAndre Prince. There are a lot of people in that secondary. Why is that important? Well, it's important if they can all play. And I didn't even mention Rayon, the young rookie Rayon Lane out of Navy. One thing about everybody I just mentioned, they're all pretty much the same size, 5'11", 6 feet, 197, 200. The other thing is they all have really, 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 really quick feet, right? And I've noticed that. They can put them down. They have good lateral movement, lateral quickness, to the point where a former NFL head coach was on the sideline and he really, really bragged and talked about how the bodies look and what they look like. Conditioning is crazy for this team. They really bought into the offseason, so that's a big deal. I'll get more into what the bodies mean for the Jaguars, but I'll tell you what the depth means for the Jaguars now. They don't have to keep anybody outside of those first. If you're going to keep 10 defensive backs, let's just say 6 or 7 of them are etched in stone, and Travis Hunter is one of them. The rest of those guys have a lot more value in 2025 than, let's just say, the dudes in those same positions had in 24, 23, 22, and here's why. Because I believe that people trust James Gladstone more than they trusted Trent Baalke. I believe that people who saw players that Trent Baalke no longer wanted either believe that those players weren't very good, or they believe that it doesn't mean anything that he's cutting them. If they don't like the starters that the Jaguars had a lot of times. So it means more now because there's a phone call that can be made that goes, hey, man, we got the way the other teams used to call us about the Cole Van Lannens and the Ezra Clevelands, and we'd answer the phone. This is the way you can now call other teams. And I don't think anyone will question why you're calling them. It's like, what you're trying to sell us? You're trying to sell us your trash? That's the way it will appear, because how can we take something from a team that we don't respect, right? I think when James Gladstone makes those phone calls, those get listened to, because I think people have a lot more respect for him and where he came from than they had with Trent, which means, and you go, well, what value does that have, Wig? Here's the value. The value is in you might be able to get more compensation for him now. You ever notice how hard it was for the Jaguars to get anything for anybody that they were trying to get rid of before? But they always went out and got other people's stuff and were able to move late round picks. Now, I believe that when those phone calls are made to like-minded people, they really do believe James Gladstone has their interest at heart, because they probably think that James Gladstone is just looking out for this player and wants to put that player in a position where he can be successful. And that is somebody that believes in alignment. Look, don't go there, go here. You're gonna actually get a chance to play here. Why would you go there? Type deal. And don't tell me that the Rams haven't done that before, because they did it with Jalen Ramsey. They did it with a lot of other people. Now, those guys had a little bit more leverage, but they understand and they have these relationships with other coaches, with other personnel people that didn't exist before. All you heard before were people trashing the Jaguars, right? And probably wondering if they ruined these guys to the point where those guys' heads were so messed up, it was going to take them 3 or 4 weeks to uncork all of that stuff and then to repackage it so that they could get a player that could help them. That's real. But it's also real for Jacksonville, and this is why that buy-in is so important. If these guys have this losing mentality, that has to be changed in-house. So by having depth, the best way to get rid of a losing mentality is to create competition. And this is something that Dewey Wingard said that made me really, really want to tap into this early in camp. Dewey Wingard did an interview yesterday with I know it was TV 47, Brent Martineau and those guys. And the way he spoke was people really bought in this year. Now, I know that there's some folks out there that believe, well, you're professional. You should buy in anyway. You should already be bought in. You shouldn't have to be motivated. I'm not arguing with that. But what I will tell you is this. It's hard to stay motivated when there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in a building that you don't understand. And Dewey kind of mentioned that yesterday about last season, talking about how guys are working their butts off and how they have been held accountable. How this coaching staff, and I told y'all in some episodes this summer, I say, don't you let those baby faces fool you. Because my wife even asked me, what kind of dude is Liam? I said, Liam is that cool dude we went to school with. That's what he is. He's the cool dude. Every time you see him, he's calm, cool, and collective. He daps you up. He's not pretentious. He is just that cool guy. He's not the dude that gave us that awful Duval at his first press conference. Well, he is, but you know what I mean. He is this cool dude. He is the one cool dude you always want to invite to the cookout, right? That's who he is. And he has an aura about him. But the thing that I know about people like that, and when you talk to them and you listen to them intently, it's like, look, it comes across like they're all nice, right? And they are nice, but they have a job to do. And this is very, very familiar. I'm very, very familiar with this line of thinking. If my kids listen to this podcast, they'll tell you, Dad, that sounds like you. And this is why it resonates with me so much. Yeah, we good and we cool, but we got a job to do. And if you ain't going to do it, I need it done. We can be cool later. We can sit down and have a single malt later. We can sit down and eat some ribs later. But I need this work done. If you can't do it, I'm going to get somebody else to do it. Kind of like when Michael Jordan told Scottie Pippen about his best friend, Charles Barkley. You don't want to go be teammates with him. That joke ain't going to be in shape. Part of the reason he wasn't in shape because he was hanging out, eating and drinking with Michael Jordan at 4 o'clock in the morning. But Michael Jordan's Batman and Charles Barkley wasn't, right? So my thing is there's an honesty to this thing. There's an honesty, but it's honest accountability. This is why those bodies are important. Because one way you break people out of bad habits is to take away something from them. And all of these dudes, everybody talks about money, they want to play too. They want to contribute. These guys are hungry. I heard Liam Cohen say yesterday, all these guys want to be coached. And boy, did that strike a chord with me because I have used the analogy of working dogs like Belgian Malinois and Rottweilers and German Shepherds. And I watched them get trained by guys like my man Chaz Laverette at Cali K9, where he instills this discipline. And these dogs, these are high performance animals, man, and they're always just right there eager to do it, right? And I'm thinking like high performance anything wants to be put in high performance situations. If you got a 72 Chevelle sitting in your driveway with a motor in it that's so big, but you ain't never bored it out and never punched that gas all the way to the floor, what do you got it for? And if you have football players that need to be trained and need to be coached and have a desire to be the absolute best because they're at the apex and they're the alphas of their profession, they want to be taught. They want to be pushed. They want to compete. They don't get a chance to do it often. They do it 17 weeks out of the season. For real. So you have to manufacture this stuff. And this is how you get out all of the bad stuff and inject nothing but new life into the franchise. Now, so that's what the depth means. The depth means it creates room for competition. And it also means that you can get compensation for guys when you have too many at one position. I'll tell you individually what these bodies mean. And we'll tie it into Trevor Lawrence, and we'll tie it in to Travis Hunter. It always comes back to the guys that you expect to be the best players. It ties in to Trayvon Walker. It ties in to Josh Allen. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning big purchases, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Man, having everything in one app is easy for me because I ain't that tech savvy. So I need that one push button effort that Monarch Money gives me. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. If you follow me here on Locked On Jaguars throughout the years, there's some things that you've always heard me talk about and hit on and say. And that is when a team injects talent in certain places as far as the tiers of the team. First round, Travis Hunter at the very top. That means you're adding top tier talent and athleticism to the very, very top of your team. Getting late round people that are scheme specific, that have certain characteristics, well, that means you're raising your floor, right? And when you raise your floor, that means that the parts of your floor that are subpar is going to fall off when you set the standard of what the floor is for the team. And then I always talk about this thing where you inject stuff right into the middle. That means you get to push these guys up, and that their level of responsibility and accountability goes up because your expectation pushes them up, and then you push other guys down from the middle, which means the guys on the bottom are still going to be pushed out, and some of those dudes in between, right? This is why this is so important for the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they're trying to change attitudes. That's for one. They're trying to create a culture where they're fighting for everything every single day and nothing is given. This is why depth is so important. Let's go to the defensive line. Gone are the days of them drafting big-time players in the top 10, Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen, and then supplementing that with people that they hope will make them look smarter as scouts. Let's get this little seventh rounder. He's our third edge rusher. Let's get this dude who's a tweener. He's a half linebacker, half edge rusher. He's going to be our other guy. Let's get this other guy that nobody knows about. This is how you end up with problems when you have hockey substitutions and you got guys coming in to make plays that aren't as good as the people in front of them. Last year, they had dudes on the field on the first drive of the game that are described by you can describe them by using the latter part of what I said about that talent. This year, you got Dwan Smoot, a 9-year veteran, and you have Emmanuel Ogbah as your backups on the defensive line. And just like I talked about Tyler Lacey earlier, I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to park right here. This is how this is done. This is how this is done. I don't know if this could have been done under the old regime, but the new regime, they have a plan for these dudes. Yeah, I'll give you $5 million for 1 year to come in here. You know what I need you for, to be nothing more than yourself. This is when Trayvon or Josh Allen has to go get a blow, or if they get nicked up, you're replacing them with some guys that have done things in this league that you trust, that the other guys don't have to help them and try to do more than they need to do because they know this guy is deficient in sort of way. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't draft the young guys like Miles Cole. It doesn't mean that you don't give them a Clouds and the other tweeners an opportunity. But you got to have things lined up for them to do that's in their wheelhouse, that allows them to take advantage of their superpower in your system. Remember Wade Phillips said, if you've got good players that you can't use in your system, you need to change your system. Good players can be used in any system, as long as the system allows good players to do the thing that they do best. Because if you ask a really good player to do something that he's not very good at, then you should get a lesser player that is better at that one thing. That's the way this works. But this is why having all of these bodies means something. Because now you create competition where you tell Miles Cole, a 7th round pick, you got to earn it. And if you can earn it, we'll keep you. If you don't earn it, you'll move on to somewhere else. But you'll earn it. You're not going to be the 3rd or 4th edge rusher by default just because I picked you and I want to show how smart I am by picking you. And I'm the guy that makes the last decision regardless of what the coach says about who stays or goes. That's not the way that this works. And I'm going to keep highlighting these changes because so many people say, Wig, I ain't going to go for it until I see it. Well, I'm telling you some things to go for, and I'm telling you why I'm optimistic that this is going to be different, because the entire process is different. Does that mean that Trent Baalke did everything wrong? No, because I just named a lot of people, especially the secondary guys, and I can even name those linebackers, whether it's Ventrell Miller, Devin Lloyd, Chad Muma. They're competing right now with Jack Kaiser, but this is the point I'm making. Jack Kaiser is coming here to take somebody's lunch money, and I spoke on that yesterday. And when you watch them play, you can see it. Somebody's in trouble. Somebody's in trouble. But no, the old regime would have gone with those guys because those are the guys that they handpicked themselves. And then they would have had some other people just running around in camp, and no matter what those guys did, as long as these other dudes didn't get hurt, they were going to ship them off. I cannot tell you that that's the way this is going to keep going. Use the fact that they have these new people in, and they're putting them in position to play. That's why I was bragging about Joshua Cephas yesterday. I was talking about Joshua Cephas coming into this season. They were trying to figure out who the fifth receiver was going to be behind the first three guys in Parker Washington. Joshua Cephas might be the fourth receiver, and we might be saying, well, Parker Washington's number 5. Are they going to keep 6? This is what I mean about putting guys in position. I saw Josh Cephas make 2 catches yesterday. I ain't never in my life seen him make. I see running backs running loose and free and looking like they're just going to play football, as opposed to thinking that the principle is on that. And by the way, people used to make a lot of big deal. I remember Jamal Agnew said it ain't no big deal, GMs at camp all the time. I wasn't never saying nothing about GMs at camp. James Gladstone is on the sideline, and then he's up top in the family waiting area. And then he's on the sideline. And he has his football. He ain't got a board looking like a play sheet, standing out there behind the coach, talking to players in between drills. Come on, man. I had dudes complain about that stuff. And no disrespect to Jamal Agnew, and Baalke paid him, and I get it. And I'm not saying that's why he said something to me back on Twitter about it. But what I'm telling you is, I ain't talking about a GM being on the field. I'm talking about a GM being on the field and coaching. And with respect to Jamal Agnew, he's a player. I'm not. I'm a member of the media, and I watched this stuff for years, and I ain't never saw that before. Even when Tom Coughlin was here as a former coach, but now he was the senior vice president, Tom Coughlin, yeah, he had on the hat, he had the sunscreen on, and he had a big play sheet, and he was listening to the coaches. He was not talking to players. He was making observations. The difference between Tom Coughlin and Trent Baalke is that Tom Coughlin used to be a former coach who won 2 Super Bowls, and Baalke was a special teams coordinator for a little college out in California, I think, or something like that. Be what you are and the best version of yourself, and stop cosplaying and pretending to be something that you're not. That's pretend. That's fake. This is tangible, and this is real. And these are real reasons why you ought to be optimistic about your Jacksonville Jaguars. Watch those sleepers. If you go out to camp, find you one of these rosters. Go through them, color code them. You're going to have about 50 names that you mark with one color as guys that you believe are going to make it. And there should be another 15 or 20 names of guys that you need to watch out for that's in a separate color. Do that and have fun with it all camp, because that's exactly what we're going to do here on Locked On Jaguars. We're also going to look at that top 100 list. Yeah, the same one that had Travis Hunter at number 67. That was created by the Locked On Podcast Network and the host of all of our NFL shows. Yours truly didn't do that, but I'm glad they did, because it gave us a lot to talk about. We even had a reaction show talking about it here on Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you check that out. But make sure you also go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast and find the full list. Have fun with it and enjoy it. It might help you during your fantasy football season and the draft and all of that stuff as you prepare for it. We'll continue to talk about camp. We'll be on the ground tomorrow at camp unless there's some unforeseen reason I won't, but not, and there's always something with me, but 9 times out of 10, I will be there. So likely an afternoon version of Locked On Jaguars on tomorrow. Make sure you guys tap in. You take care. I'll see you later.